A woman tried to break into my car yesterday to rescue my dog from 60-degree weather. Anyone else have stories of idiotic vigilantes? Part 2. Story 14. Reverse situation. My dad was a vigilante who got attacked by a complete idiot car owner. There was a huge fire in an abandoned house, and 3 huge 60-feet-high eucalyptus trees in the front caught fire as well. We had alerted the fire brigade, but they were still nowhere in sight, and out of the 5 cars parked directly in front of the eucalyptus trees, only 4 were moved by the owners. By the time the fire was starting to look like it would start producing humongous falling fiery branches, my dad decided enough was enough, took initiative, and a rock broke the driver's side window, opened the door, released the handbrake, and we all rolled the car to safety. 5 minutes after we rolled the unmanned car about 40 feet away from the raging fire, out comes the owner from her nearby house, a woman in her 40s, in an even bigger rage. She demanded to know why he broke the window, and after some time passed and we were sure she wasn't joking, we showed her the branches that had been falling continuously where she had parked the car. The smallest one was the size of a baseball bat. The largest one took 2 fully grown men to carry off the road after the fire was put out. If we hadn't moved the car, it would be ruined at the least and possibly exploded, as the fire brigade later agreed. She, however, failed to understand how that involved her car and how the falling branches would burn and/or explode it into oblivion. We had to go to court to explain why she was an idiot and why we shouldn't pay for the broken window. We got justified, but the trial took a work day off my dad's paycheck. One would guess insurance would cover the costs, but she didn't want to call them. No good deed goes unpunished, I guess. My guess is she wanted the car destroyed so she could claim it on insurance. Your dad fricked up her plans. Either that or just a bitter person who wanted any reason to try to bring someone to court. Sadly, there are people out there who look for any opportunity to screw others over. Not to say that most lawsuits are frivolous, but some are, and this lady sounds like she might just be like that, which is sad. Story 15. A lady got concerned about my dog in my car too. It was funny because she didn't notice me in the car. Someone needs to take care of their Oh, hello there. Story 16. When I was a toddler, my mom, who was pregnant at the time, would tie me to the clothesline with a lead. Think like a dog run. I could run back and forth along the clothesline as far as the lead would allow me. The lady neighbor always scolded my mother for doing this, saying it was cruel to treat me like a dog. I honestly don't even remember it, so I doubt it was very traumatic. My mom replied that she was 9 months pregnant with my brother, and having to keep within a certain radius made it much easier for her to keep an eye on me. So my mom was keeping an eye on me playing in the backyard one day, and the lady came over to yell at her about it again. Crazy neighbor lady ended up untying me. I took off running straight into the middle of an extremely busy street. My pregnant mother screaming and running after me to catch me. I could have been killed because some stupid lady thought that having me tied to a clothesline was too cruel, but didn't bother to consider that maybe a 2-year-old near a busy street should be restrained somehow. Honestly, crazy lady, wherever you are, you did me no favors that day. Bet she also put you in a bed with bars on it to sleep at night, like a baby cage. If I was your mom, after I grabbed you from the street, I would have absolutely punched that woman directly in the face. And I'm not a violent person, nor do I typically condone violence. But even childless me felt a fury and terror reading that scenario. And in that moment, I think a pregnant mom who just saved her child would have been well within her right to dole out some justice. Story 17. My wife was driving a couple weeks ago and saw an older couple in a small sedan next to her in traffic with a toddler sitting on the lap of the male front seat passenger without a car seat. She followed them a couple miles all the way to a Walmart parking lot and jumped out to give him/them a talking to. As she approached their car, she discovered that the male was extremely hairy and wearing shorts, and what she thought to be a toddler's head was his hairy exposed knee. Actually, he was. He reproduces vegetatively, and his knee was splitting off into a separate organism. Story 18. My sister owns an older Arabian stallion, horse. At the time, she was living on a dead-end road on a large property in an area of our city where there were several other horse owners, and it was a nice private location with plenty of room to exercise the horse. One day, my sister and I arrive at her house after doing errands to find the woman she has never seen before standing over by the horse petting it. My sister asks the woman if she can help her with anything, and the woman informs her she has called animal control and launches into a tirade about the horse being underfed and that my sister is a horrible person and the horse needs to be taken away. Right about then, animal control arrived to assess the situation and the horse's condition, only to leave shortly thereafter because the complaint had been unwarranted. The horse is fine. The woman gets huffy and leaves. We left the house again and came back to see that the woman had returned. She had dumped literal bags of apples into the horse's corral and starts going on again about how the horse is underfed. My sister tells her to leave and that if she comes back, she's calling the cops. Feeding a horse a few apples is fine. Stuffing them to the brim with apples can cause colic, which can be fatal to the horse. In this case, the horse did actually develop colic and had to be treated by a veterinarian. The woman clearly knew nothing about horses, and the only logical conclusion I could come up with is that her ignorance led her to believe that all horses look the same and did not take into account the smaller, slighter frame of the breed, or she was just crazy. I'm guessing that she is just someone who really loves horses, reads books about horses, and had fantasized for years about owning a horse, but instead of actually learning about caring for them and getting her own, she has instead chosen to fawn over every horse she ever sees and thinks she has some magic connection with them and knows everything about them. There are people like that for horses, dogs, kids, all kinds of stuff. They are well-meaning, so I don't hate them, but at the same time, the fact that they don't actually know what they are doing can be harmful, and that's not cool. Loving horses or dogs or whatever doesn't make you an expert on them, folks. Story 19. I used to live in a small, hippie-riddled town in Northern California. One day, an animal rights activist planned an action to be carried out solo. He was going to liberate the lobsters that were being held against their will, waiting to be auctioned off for food to whomever was willing to pay. Basically, he was going to set the lobsters free from the co-op where they were being sold, out of a huge, clean tank, mind you. So he stole these lobsters somehow, and he set them free in the Pacific Ocean, where they all promptly died. Animal liberation at its best. Story 20. My first dog was actually abducted from my front yard by a vigilante. So I live kind of out in the country and we have a big yard. We never put our dog on a leash because she doesn't like them and we don't need to put her on one. Well, one day we couldn't find our dog and she never wanders away. After searching for a while, we get a call from the local humane society saying someone has brought in our dog. My dad goes down there and asks who brought our dog there. Apparently, some guy saw our dog in the front lawn and decided she wasn't safe, so he took her. She was a friendly dog that loved car rides, so of course she went with him. When bringing her in, the guy used his belt as a makeshift leash, and my dog bit right through it as well as one of the leashes at the Humane Society. The lady at the Humane Society tells my dad that he needs to have a leash to take his dog home and that he will have to pay for the belt and the leash. My dad informs her that the guy has stolen his dog and he's lucky he doesn't press charges. They release our dog without a leash and she happily climbs in my dad's truck and they go home. My dogs run around without leashes in a fenced-in yard, so I could never see this happening to me. However, if someone ever did take my dogs for a reason like this, even if I got my dogs back, the person who took them better have covered their tracks because I would hunt them down. I would go full Liam Neeson from Taken. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. Story 21. My family had a Staffordshire bull when I was young called Bert. Bert used to love dangling and tugging on tree branches and would spend up to 20 minutes just growling and dangling off a branch. Anyway, one day the police arrived and accused us of hanging a dog. My mom hadn't got a clue what he was going on for a while until she realized Bert. So she took the officer to the field where the dog was dangling and then shouted at him. He came bounding over, and when told to get to tree, he sprinted back and attacked the branch. The policeman just laughed and apologized. I still have no idea why someone would look at a dog which was supposedly being hanged and just ring the police instead of going and helping the dog. Very poor vigilantes in the UK. Story 22. Well, to start off, I used to volunteer quite a bit at my local humane society. While volunteering one day, someone came in to drop off a large male boxer with a large tumor hanging from his groin, several smaller tumors on his body, giant pus-filled abscesses between his toes, and patches of fur missing due to what I later found out was a thyroid problem. Also, he was severely overweight and looked like he hadn't seen the outside of a kennel in years. The Humane Society worker took one look at the dog after signing in and decided he should be put down in a few days. I've always had a soft spot for large, galooti dogs, so I figured I'd foster him until I could find a rescue or vet charitable enough to help him. So I took him home, and that spurred 3 whole weeks of ridicule. This is how long it took me to find a vet who would treat him. From countless passerbys who shouted profanity, insults, and even sectarian remarks hurled at me just for trying to walk him, even though I was clearly wearing a Humane Society volunteer badge. Now, I understood why people would assume that this animal was being abused/neglected, but the amount of verbal abuse I endured was almost unbearable. Every time I put his leash on, I had to mentally prepare myself for confrontation and hope that it didn't become physical because the sight of this dog made people seriously peed. I heard, "Take care of that dog, you stupid bee!" yelled at me from quite a few cars, got honked at incessantly, and my favorites, "Why don't you people ever take your dogs to the vet?" And of course, stupid N, hope you go to jail. There was only one time where one of the hecklers actually stopped telling me how terrible I was to listen to my side of the story. And after I told it, they questioned the validity of my volunteer badge and wouldn't take my story as truth until many of the people at the dog park confirmed it. I took a lot of abuse just for helping that dog, but it was worth it. I eventually adopted him, and he gave me 5 of the best years of my life. Miss you, Brock. First off, to all those people yelling crap at you without context, can F clean off. But for the people also using racial slurs, the stuff I would wish on them would have to be censored on here. So let me just say an extra huge F off to them. Folks, you can be concerned for an animal without jumping to conclusions and mistreating your fellow human beings. If you think yelling gross stuff at strangers you know nothing about makes you a hero, you're a piece of crap. You're not a good person. To the OP, I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I'm glad it was worth it. Brock was lucky to find a forever home with someone as caring and awesome as you. Story 23. There was a fire ban in our area that I didn't know about, so when I fired up the grill, my neighbor called the cops on me. When I asked her, "Why did you call the police instead of just warning me?" her response was quite literally, "Because I didn't want you to get a ticket." Dumbest freaking thing I ever heard come out of someone's mouth. Luckily, the police officer was cool and just made me put the fire out instead of giving me the ticket. Story 24. One year, on the 4th of July, I parked my car in a dirt parking lot with a bunch of other cars. When it was time to leave, I saw one line of cars led to the street and another empty pathway to the road that no one else was taking. It was dark, and I stupidly took the empty pathway to find that there was a 2-foot-wide trench that I got my tires stuck into. My car has front-wheel drive. While calling a tow truck, a lady came up to me screaming that I was blocking the way and that I needed to remove my vehicle at once, otherwise she was going to get me arrested for getting my car stuck where any other car would have gotten stuck. Some kind men helped me get my car out, and I canceled the tow truck, but one of them kept insisting I sue the city. Why? For getting myself stuck in a trench? Don't sue, but you should report the trench. In many places, the state is not responsible for damages caused by potholes, etc. that were never reported. Reporting means they'll fix it, or someone whose car is damaged will get compensated. Story 25. Not really an idiot, but nonetheless was hilarious. I was smoking pork shoulder on my barbecue. I went inside to let it do its thing when a little while later a bearded man burst into my house. He was wearing cut-off jean shorts, a muscle tank top from the 80s, and rain boots. His head reminded me of a Beach Boy, the bearded 50-year-old look. He shouts, "Your house is on fire!" I, of course, jump up and run outside, thinking something must be wrong. I open the barbecue, and it's smoking away. Nothing wrong. He followed me into the backyard, and I told him everything was cool. I was just smoking some meat. There was like a small crowd outside my backyard gate. Must have been his family or something. I thanked him for his concern, and my stupid brain kept telling me, ask him what he is wearing. I never did, though. The guy just leaves without saying much and calls off the crowd. I never saw him again, but I still have laughing fits when my wife reminds me of the time the old man in jean cutoffs and rain boots bust through the door to save us. It was good on him to check. He wasn't an idiot, just dressed like one. Did you ever think that maybe that man was you, wearing a disguise so absurd that you wouldn't look closely enough to realize it was old man you from the future? You needed to go back in time and get something from your old house, something that could change the course of history. You needed this thing to save the world. But how to get younger you out of the house? You recall a day when you were smoking meat, a perfect time to gather a crowd and yell fire. Younger you will be distracted, and you can get the object you need. The perfect time crime. Time crime. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.